here, which I'll join you later in when I add it. All right. Everybody, we're back with another Brush Sauce Theater critique session. Adam couldn't be here with us today, unfortunately, but I do have Jess, extremely talented, and again, willing to give her time to help me out here. So the prompt was, I believe it was Winter Battalion, and you could choose a few themes. I think it was like something like Soviet troops, or I think it was feudal Japan. Honestly, I don't even remember at this point, but we're going to go with it. There's about 19, so we're going to open up them in a few different sets. All right, so Adrian's back. This is great, Adrian. This is a really, this is like a good breakthrough image for you, I feel, because you've broken past these, the drawing side of it with the space. Like, you usually depict space in a very layered, sort of, almost like a stage-like setup. So this feels, a little bit more cinematic than a lot of your pieces, and I like that. And I think you're getting, getting better at drawing three-dimensional spaces as well. Jessica, would you like to add something at this point?
Yeah, there's a few things that are catching my eye. One of the first things, just because it's kind of off on the side by itself, is the wall. The architectural structures feel very unreferenced. And so I think that just looking at some photos of different structures that are shaped like that, and getting more of like a concrete understanding of them would help you design it so it feels less like, a block that represents a wall. And then there's also some focal point issues, I would say, with the composition. Because he's in the foreground and there's very high contrast, you kind of think that the guy like in the very front of the image should be the center focus.
Mm-hmm.
But because he's a dark shape coming off of the border of the image, it actually like diminishes him and makes him feel less like a focal point. Whereas the little shape sticking out of the snow, the bloody guy, I guess, by himself, that kind of like commands attention to be the focal point.
I think he's supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be. But he's way too tiny.
He's way too small.
Everything about him. Like, you've got these guys, like, kilometers or miles in the background behind him, and they're the same size, if not larger. Like, there's like a scale problem, with the perspective and the proportions of the characters, and you can measure all that out. There's ways to do it. In the case of today, I'm just going to make this larger to kind of show you, like, that would fit, much more appropriately as I enlarge the wall as well, bringing the immense, action and the drama a lot closer to the viewer, definitely kind of involving us a lot more. So see, it's just like everything's just so far away. Bring us up here, bring us into this moment.
I actually almost didn't even realize it was a whole person. I thought it was like a bloody arm or
I
something
think he's
sticking out of the snow.
Yeah, killed over.
Because it was so tiny. And also another thing that's throwing me off just slightly is the white wolf intersecting the shape of all of the dark soldiers, because it's so out of place that it almost wants to be a focal point in and of itself, but its nose is kind of tangenting with the snow. But like having that like strong white figure in a sea of dark tells the eye that this is like really important. And so I think that wolf is getting way more attention in the composition.
Yeah, I think for this image, you got with so much going on, just simply removing the character and certainly helping like move this character a bit more like out of frame. Like I'd almost like kind of cover him up over that wolf altogether and then simplify out that area. Is what I do.
And that gives you more room to actually develop the focal point.
Yeah. But, great job, Adrian. I think you should keep working in these period genre pieces, things that you can heavily reference. Because I do know, stylistically with your stuff, you end up making up so much of your content. It's hard to grow efficiently when you're fabricating so much of it, purely from your imagination.
I do feel like the soldiers were much better referenced than the architecture.
Oh, they look on point. I love what you did with the soldiers. I think it's worth saying. All right, Alyssa. All right, this is awesome.
Yeah, I really like this one. I think like immediately, like the composition, the design of it is really well done. There's a great sense of movement and framing. It's very cinematic that I like.
Yeah, Alyssa, the drawing is on point with this. The action is on point. And as I was getting to, it still doesn't read though. Even though you're doing like a winter scene and it's very overcast and you won't have, very specific areas of light versus shadow, you have to make compromises in a scene this complex. Because when you really do zoom out, it all just blends together.
Yeah, you're
Like,
getting like a checkerboard of light and dark across the whole
yeah,
image.
it's all like a wash. So you got to figure out what you need to, what you need to, oh, that's just out of
Bro.
mind of its own. Yeah, I don't know what my, you got to like, bring all this, like, for example, a little bit more into focus.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like so contrasty, right? Like that. And then select, this would be your grays. The background, like you have it, would be your light. But also, like, internally, like if this shape on the character here is something you need to highlight, back here, you'd either make that a little darker, like the character up here, or you come in on the horse side and you just darken that up, or you straight up would add, or I'd add rather, atmosphere and elements that come in between them, because you got to get these bigger shapes. I would argue that you got to get them to read more, because it flattens this whole dynamic image very highly. Like, see, like the side of his arm right here, particularly like with this character, it's like the same value range as these fellas in the back. So again, the only way to really separate that is to either make this lighter and that darker, or to make this lighter and this a bit darker. It's one thing or the other. It doesn't matter. There's not a right or a wrong way to do it. But to get these shapes in these areas to really read, that's what you'd have to do. See, like behind his arm, under here, like that's the perfect place. Get in there and like just amp up those shadow shapes substantially.
Yeah,
It's
and if you think about like the environment, like they're in this snowy environment that's like the snow is very reflective of light. So it's really easy to push like the atmosphere the farther back that it goes, of the snow in the air, the ice in the air, and really create a nice depth of field as you get farther away. You get more atmosphere between you and the figures, and that'll give it a much more immersive feeling and make it less flattened out.
see, like back here, and this is the hardest challenge with doing such complex scenes. It's not like putting the detail in there, but it's curating that detail and filtering out what's essential and what's not essential, so that you can get your idea really across. So see, like, you could definitely like loosen some of these guys up quite a
Hmm.
bit, knock them back. I mean, I'd put blue in them too. Like, it's just getting it all to read as shapes. When you have it up here, let me just group to show you before we move on. See, it's just like, it's like taking
Yeah.
all the visual noise and you're just organizing it for the viewers to see.
So you get that immediate read when all the values are grouped. Like it's you want to think before you start thinking about the light and dark of the individual pieces of the shape, you want to start thinking about which shapes are light and which shapes are dark.
Mm-hmm.
And then go in and stick, when you add in the highlights, stay true to, if it's a dark shape, then the highlights are still going to be darker than the shadows in the light areas.
Kigo art. Fishing samurai. Yeah, it's a battalion taking some time off.
I think one of the first things that jumps out to me is the feeling of everything kind of being squished to one side of the canvas. Uh,
Yeah. It's an
like
awkward composition.
like part of me kind of wants to just see the canvas get expanded on both sides, so you get a little more of the water, so it doesn't feel like we're like missing all the action of the fishing, but also like I don't want them to feel like they're crunched up at the side of the canvas either. So I just feel like
Yeah.
a little breathing room on both
It's
sides.
almost like a square composition, which, unless you're making like an image to print on a TV coaster or like an album cover, it's like, maybe give it a little bit more room, like Jessica says here, to breathe. It can go a long way. See, like, I'm not gonna paint in there, but just like having these characters staged in a position where the eye can really focus on them,
And
could do a lot.
I think too the idea that there's this massive dark shape. Everything in the scene is light except for them, except for this massive dark shape that they're up against. And yeah, like when they're kind of like the bridge between the light canvas and then this dark shape, it feels like they're cutting the canvas in half. Or not in half, but like where they are, where the world kind of changes around.
Mm-hmm.
That helps, like carrying the light through to the other side. Um, Yeah, because even when the picture ended with just that dark shape, it felt like you always want it to feel like the world continues on either side of your
It's
painting.
about balance.
Hmm.
And like this shape here is, for me personally, it's like
It's
the
confusing.
image would be 10 times better. Literally just without this massive snow heap that's just like right here. It's just like, it's just there, but it's not, it's framing that, but I don't know. It's just, to me, it comes off as very awkward.
Hmm.
So just like simplify it. Again, chop your painting down, break it down, keep the essential, remove the unessential, and that'll always give you like really what's important, for what you're getting across. Maybe you could open it up with like a little bit more of that water back here. You could do
Yeah,
whatever. I would just lose
much
that
prettier.
big shape right there, which is again creating a lot of awkwardness to it. And I think fundamentally this is where you could really push things. Like I really like kind of where things are going
Yeah, it's
like
a
that.
cool idea, and a lot of the landscape is really nicely done. So I think it's worth
See,
pushing it a
like
little
again,
bit.
chop this shape out, paint that as nice, frigid, cold water. In a scene like this too, you'll probably have lots of like looser sort of grass that not only stick up, but again, even in shadow places, you're gonna see a little bit more noise with somehow like this can work as well. Um,
Another thing that's really catching my eye is the color, the temperatures.
yeah,
Uh,
and the
I'm feeling
characters.
like the characters are so warm compared to the environment that they almost feel like out of place, like cut and pasted in. Like their skin tones are very pink. If you think that they're in this like very cool bluish environment, they're very, very warm pinks for their skin tones. And also they would be really cold. So think about like what skin looks like when it's cold. Like it would get more pale, but then like around like the nose and the knuckles and things like that, you would get more of that like reddish
Yeah, just do
color.
exactly what I did on the uniforms. Is like just take a little bit of that warmth out to neutralize it a bit, so it'll work with the entire temperature of the scene. Good stuff.
I think the gesture of the figures is really nice though. Like
Yeah,
the girl up at the top casting the fishing
I
rod
like it. I,
sitting
I
there.
like your take on the
Well drawn.
theme. Uh,
Hmm.
Now this is crazy. All right, Jennifer, this is
Holy
this is
shit.
ambitious. Very very neat. Like there is
I
like a sense of action here.
I
I
have
think with as important this is, there's not enough emphasizing its scale and magnitude. I got part of that is because the horizon's so high, and this would feel so much more important had you dropped that, quite a bit to make it feel, like it's the absolute, terror that it is.
I think too, I feel like the clouds are kind of stealing the show. The clouds are
Yeah.
really nice and this nice vibrant color, and I feel like they're more defined than the bear and the figure on the bear. Like the painting on the bear feels much muddier and less decisive than the painting in the clouds, which I think is making the clouds feel more important.
Yeah, that's what it is for me. Like overall, is that there's a very severe lack of polish, going on. It does feel like it's still very rough in a lot of areas. And again, I like the color choices and I like the idea, but like
Yeah.
I said, lower the horizon, almost simplify, if you can, that sky. Maybe get like a little more deep oranges and reds into there as well. Get some nice subtle greens, at the horizon. Really kind of create. And there's not a right or wrong answer to a lot of this anyway, but this sky is almost really kind of trying to compete here, right, with this character. So I'm gonna try. I do want to keep for the most part exactly what you're going for, but I'm just simplifying that out. See, like you can get like a little bit more blues, a little bit more purples up there. I'm gonna go a little darker, and then you can like really warm it up, intensify it, if you want to call it that, like toward the horizon, right? Really spike in those warm reds and stuff. Like you can get it pretty vivid and dramatic, and there's a lot of ways to, maybe not so much like that, but. But yeah, like
I think also like if and it's very clearly is the bear holding this figure is like the focal point of the painting. I feel like you should really take the time and go in there and define those forms better, paint the textures better. Just bring it to life, give it the love and attention and detail that you gave those clouds.
Yeah, it's really about like the texture and a lot of the subtle brushwork, in there. See, I'm trying to be very delicate with this. My computer's still a little bogged down right now. It didn't want to wake up this morning. End of the year, folks. New computer goal. I just want to make this last till December.
And I almost wonder if because I feel like the top of that guy's head is a little too close to the top of the image. I almost wonder if you make the guy a little smaller, it'll just add, it'll give him a little more breathing room over his head, but also kind of add to that feeling of the bear being ginormous.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to frame this atmosphere and this light. I just got fixated on it. Right? So I'm just doing that, and then, just straight up removing, where I kind of messed that up. Sorry, I messed that up there. But, right, getting your character back. Right, put him up there, simplify the sky, bring some of these deep colors into the character, lower horizon. And again, what I'm doing here, that's making a tangent, I know that. Lower the heads, perhaps even slightly more, will make this guy feel even higher up. Then you can focus on that empty field there. But altogether, this guy is, as it is competing too much with this, and he feels too sandwiched in. But great moment,
he
great
feels
idea.
Trying not to tangent with the other guy's helmet or the bear. Just kind of
stuck
in the middle.
That's the disclaimer there. Every time you do a major fix like that, you do open the possibilities of creating or breaking other parts of the image, so you have to go in like a surgeon and really adapt and sort things out. I didn't see a name. Maybe there's a name on the file. Omiv. Alright. That's all we get. Oh, and then there's a name down here. I'm not going to try to... Nice signature, but I can't read signatures, so that's fine. Here we go.
This is cool. This is really well...
I love this one. I was telling just before we open this, even though I'm having trouble with your name, I actually really adore this image. I think it's a really good job. I love the style. I love the boldness.
I didn't notice the little exclamation mark over the guy's head. That's fun.
Oh, there is one. That alone adds. It's a little too gray for me. I try to I don't know the right way to do this, but I would try to sprinkle in, a little bit more of this color. Actually, I think it just broke.
Yeah, I do like the grays, but I do feel like it's almost too extreme where the orange is and everything else feels monochromatic, especially since he's already framed in black, that the glowing orange on top of that does make it a little over the top.
So you can add things in even subtly with some different types of layers and stuff. It just adding a little bit more ambience into the scene, or even taking some of the elements on the outside, on the outskirts like this, and then adding in pretty manually some of those colors.
I do feel like I love the design of the shapes and the composition. That feels really well thought out. There's something about the hanging or floating figure that feels less well designed than everything else. The shape of the silhouette feels more generic. And I don't know, because it's the focal point, I kind of want to see the design language there, kind of
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that a cave, or is it coffin or tomb. There is a lot. Like I 100% agree with you on that. There's like a little bit of unresolvedness for a focal area. That's just like, what's
Yeah,
kind of going on.
the little army of guys is way more interesting than the floating figure. The only reason that he's the focal point is because he's
It's red.
glowing orange in a field of black versus them, but their design is way more interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you want to bring in, if there's like really warm right there, that would affect
Hmm.
the environment as well, particularly snow. Like it's going to be picking up
The oranges.
oranges, a little bit of those yellows in there. I'm doing again a very quick, ugly version of that, but just to show you would see that affect it. On top of that, you've painted a nice scene here, featuring all this stuff. But again, the focal area, we're so, as a viewer, experiencing this moment. It feels like we should be, I would want to be among these guys to really see that. I think the easiest band-aid fix for that is to just, quite a bit crop in that scene. Because, like, you always got to ask yourself, is all this stuff extra, is it adding anything to what you're trying to sell here? Is it enriching it? Is it helping the narrative? Yeah, it's debatable. So I think in this particular case, in your particular case, getting on to the meat of the picture will help sell all of that. But yeah, I love your shapes. I love your colors. A little bit more work in there, and again, is suggesting on a recrop. All right, we're back with the next set here. I found the culprit that was entirely crippling my computer, and I want to make a lesson or an example out of this for everybody that's going to submit further. I've said this in the past, but I don't. It's on me. I don't reiterate it when I post these. This file for Captain Blue here, we have no name Captain Blue, is absurdly massive. Uh, it is absolutely crippling. Like, please, guys, if you're gonna submit it, let's cap it at no more than like 2,000 at 72. Right? 72 is for digital and everything kind of web based. So unless you're physically going to print your file out, there's no reason for it to be 300. It is absolutely doing nothing but slowing your computer down to some degree, even if it's a supercomputer, and it's absolutely destroying mine. So let's keep that at 72, guys.
It's also, if you're going to be sending work like portfolios and stuff, like, or images to art directors and people that you want to send your work to get jobs, they're going to be really frustrated with huge files.
They won't even bother. Like, they're going to close it. They're like, yeah, I'm done.
Like, I think if your picture is like maybe like 2 or 3 megabytes is a much better size. I think this was like over 200 megabytes when he first tried to open it.
Yeah, 220. 220.
Yeah. Even 15 megabytes is still a pretty large image to be sending someone like in an email or something.
Okay, so watch this. We're looking at it as it currently is. Absolutely a massive file. Look at this. I'm blowing this up. It's the same size on my screen. There's not a single loss of detail. Mm-hmm. There's Exhibit A right there, folks. It's fake sizing that digital world, it doesn't matter. Keep it at 72. So, on that note, I'd have to ask, why would your file be anywhere near that high? Because I'd have to assume that this, although I don't know and I can't speak, it just feels like a color sketch. I don't know if this is intended to be done or not. Stylistically, yes, you could be pulling, but there's just too many parts of it that just feel left unresolved.
Unresolved, yeah.
I love the idea. Let's get that. I feel like I've been bullying this person. I absolutely love the drawing. I love the composition. Mm-hmm. There's some anatomical and scale things going on. But I actually love what you've done here.
It does feel like there's a lot of attention to the graphic shapes. Like the design of the shapes are really nice. Especially the way you've used the banners to frame the 2 foreground guys, the trio of the horses turning. Like, I feel like those shapes are very well designed, but they're not executed well. Like the hard black outlines, maybe you could get away with that on the front horse if you're going for a really abstract graphic approach. But on the horse to the right, it just looks like an incomplete outline. It
looks like an image that's not sure it's kind of reached its potential yet. And I have to say that because I don't know what it's the goal for like a finished version of this would ever be. I just don't know. But either way, and for the sake of like making something marketable or something portfolio worthy, it needs to look finished, if not like really consistent internally.
And I think there's some visual cues, like a little like noisy areas that are telling us that it's messy rather than like intentionally
Hmm.
um, abstract. Like underneath the main horse, like the chest area, you see little glimmers of white showing through where it would be dark between the legs.
Yeah,
Um,
it
so like
looks.
like where the outlines like around all the legs, you get those little flecks of like where like the white wasn't covered up properly,
Hmm.
or like between the right horse's legs where there's the white, but you got that little sliver of gray going between them. It just feels incomplete. Like those brush marks weren't really like exactly
the
how
the
they were
term I
intended.
use with a lot of my students that we try to avoid it. We try to build good habits, and that's to avoid choppy and sloppy. They
Yeah.
are the enemy. So this one's again. It looks like a color rough. Like it. If you did this mech, which I assume you did because it's the same one in here, I think the mech design for your battalion is awesome. Like
Yeah.
this is sweet. I think in terms of, and I want to talk about this because this is nowhere near a stage that I should critique and assess it. I think the composition's there. I think the lighting looks cool. But again, it's just way too underbaked to even have a discussion about that. You got to finish that up. But your mech design, I think that's really cool. I think if you add a bit more believable elements to the scale of it, like when you zoom in, like having some of these areas of simplicity is really good. But let's put on like more of these decals, more like these put like a number, put a serial thing, put its battalion, signal, its emblem. Maybe they painted it. If it's in the winter, you should really weather this up. Add bits of rust, add snow, add dings and clings, and it should feel like it's not off a toy line, and it's something that's tangible and believable for a setting. And that means, okay, you got the design down, but now weather it, age it, and nail the materials. Do you want to add anything to this point, Jess?
Yeah, it's really hard to critique at this point because a lot of the things that I would point out, I feel like would be resolved if this were just, painted on for, a significant more amount of time. Like the level of detail in the background of the trees and the buildings that you can tell are kind of like brushes and stuff is far more intricate and tiny than the details of like right up where the fire is, where like the focal point is. So things like that would be needed to be resolved. I think that the setup, like the way you have this underlit mech, is very dramatic, very well designed, and I think with the love and attention of finishing this painting, it could be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like there's something right now. I understand because it's a color sketch basically. The light gray figures feel kind of like in a different world than that fire. But
Yeah.
again, I feel like that's
Make
something that would
it
be
just
resolved
wasn't
by
finished.
painting it.
All right, we
Yeah.
gotta go. Just needs to be finished. That's all. All right. Arn Billin. All right. Armored Winter Battalion. Color choice and atmosphere. This is cool.
Yeah.
Like, I love the thought that you put in the planning stages here. Like, I love this one here. This is really cool. These definitely are the stronger ones, and I
I
think this
I
is
don't know. That bottom one is really cool. I like that
like
bottom one.
that one. Yeah, I think if you fix a few tangents, make the character a little bit bigger, and again, I think if we saw it fully resolved, that'd actually be really good. And
Yeah.
so it seems like you've done some kind of combination of a
I
few of
I
these. I don't
I
know if I like
you
this one
kind of
necessarily more than some of these, though.
yeah. I feel like the thumbnails are actually much stronger than the
Yeah,
composition, the finished one. Um,
I
you
have to.
know, from
I was like on the fence with that, but after looking and diving into these, there's just a lot I really do like about them that isn't here. Maybe it's because I have this idea in my head that okay, this should be more finished, but like structurally though, like this is a really great close up moment because the character's right there, and then like this is a really good like okay, yeah, we're just checking things out, but it's got a really good flow, really nice sense of depth and everything. Whereas this, it's like okay, he's here. It's very awkwardly drawn in that
and
regard.
I feel like all the shapes are kind of fighting each other in the
Yep.
composition of the final one. They're competing with each other versus they're really well integrated and balanced in the thumbnails. So And another thing that caught my eye with your, to move away from the thumbnails, but just looking at your final image, is the repetition of shapes that feel unreferenced. Like the trees kind of all feel samey, but they also feel made up. The buildings in the background feel very samey, but made up. So I think maybe like you're pulling from just like a symbol in your mind of what it should look like, and so you're just coming up with this generic shape over and over again, rather than referencing the trees really well and getting a sense of what these dead, bleak
the
winter
the
trees would
the,
actually
the
look like.
trees don't bother me too much. I do think they need like a few, like a tree does. It needs to branch out in a smaller, much smaller pieces and parcels and stuff overall. But yeah, like you'd have to clean up quite a bit in here. And in turn, for me, the color isn't working because it looks like you did have a gray scale image, and you just kind of gave it that quick wash once over. Whereas it feels like you don't have control 100% over that color yet, and that
Hmm.
things are either just warmy yellow and then they're like tucked into blue and stuff. Where it just feels like, okay, that serves as a good underpainting, but it needs like a lot more of that finesse to really
It,
bring it
it feels
forward.
like a filter that's kind of just trying
Yep.
to like put color over top of the image rather than actually being painted.
And it's not like your fault or anything. It takes a good amount of work to adequately colorize, and that's why the term I colorize a black and white painting, which is why like I've just moved away from that because it
Yeah,
drove me crazy.
I
Um,
won't start in black and white anymore. I generally will
it can
start.
be done. I've done it on the YouTube channel, but it is a lot of work,
Some
and
some people are really good at it, but it,
it's tough. Like
I think there's something to be said for trying it the other way as well, starting with color and then refining your colors as you go. Especially if you have a good sense of value structure, which I feel like you do,
yeah,
because
you do.
looking at your thumbnails, they're pretty balanced as far as value structure and space goes. So if you've already got a good sense of value structure, then maybe if you're struggling with color, start with color.
It'll make you work through it. But this is a good submission. I love all of your comps, and you're getting there. You just keep at it and definitely practice. Do lots of color studies. Do the virtual plein airs, take shots, and just work on that color. All right, Eric, how you doing? This is very humorous and playful. I like it.
I
They've
think one thing
but
that's really jumping out to me is how cartoony the faces and instruments are, as opposed to other parts that feel like they're intended to look realistic, like the tank and the wood and
yeah, yeah.
environment.
Like this has got like drawing aside and like getting nailing the theme and the moment and stuff. For me there's just a lot of external sort of awkwardness about some of the decisions made in terms of how it's rendered. Like these characters, they're not only like it feels like it belongs in a children's book, which if that's your goal, that's your goal, that's fine. But for like a bit of a war scene, I mean, these feel like they look like they're visually like children. Do you get that vibe? Is it just me? Like these look like
Yeah,
little
well, I
boys.
think it's like it's the combination. We're kind of getting this like uncanny, like it's like you have like realistic fabric on the clothes or the attempt like to push
And
it to
then
realism, but
very
then you have the instrument which is like this flat red graphic shape, or you have like the background of like this blue sky that almost looks like a cutout, which is like more like children's book illustration of like these like graphic shapes. But then it's also mixing with like the tank and the clothing, which is designed to look more realistic. So you're getting this weird mixed message of what the picture's supposed to be.
mm-hmm. And I
I
again, because I don't know the exact intent behind that, it's hard to say.
well,
What should you absolutely do? Because like we would steer you down the wrong direction if this is your goal. But if that's your goal, then it's like you'd want to make it feel internally consistent in regards to how things are rendered. Like the
yeah, you have to.
skins, it's all very flat, and then you have texture and form. In the background and the logs and the clothing, but there's not that same attention on the faces, the characters.
Looking at the reference makes me think that he would have been trying to go more for realism. Looking at like the fact that he's referencing like a very realistic painting, as well as like photo reference, um, makes me think that he probably is intending like the level of detail in the clothes and the tank. makes me think that he would want to push it towards realism.
Then drawing wise, the problem lies in the drawing then, because if you draw the characters looking proportionately and stylistically like children, it will look like children no matter how much you paint it. And
then
you'd have
also,
to
like,
fix that in the drawing.
yeah, maybe just go in and get more like photo references of the
Definitely more
pieces, things
references.
like that. Um, and just a minor thing, like for the composition, like the story here is this guy like crouched down dancing, like, and we're all expecting like the leg to kick out, like that, like
Yeah. Almost gotta
jumping
show
around.
the leg kicking
So,
out on this.
so the log with the axe right in front of the guy, mentally, like subconsciously, is impeding the movement that he would be making. Like
Yeah.
it feels like there's not enough room for him to be dancing in the way that we expect him to
You're
be
on
dancing.
point with this one, Jess. Yeah, I just remove that log and the axe altogether, and get
Yeah.
the leg out, because it feels very stiff, and it's almost like yeah, we know he's dancing and singing, but it's also the same position these guys would probably do if they had to do a little bit of a soldier bathroom break in this environment. So yeah, get him dancing and less just straight up squatting.
Yeah, yeah, because we want to see that. That's the point of the image. We want to see the fun. We don't care about the log and the axe in the foreground.
This is really interesting. Cipher Abyss. Look at this cat. First image of the challenge to crack me up. Here we go. Look, there's like
Oh my
samurai
God.
cats right here going on.
Oh my God. The
Max. All right, Max. This is
I don't even know where to start. Wow.
I don't
That's
know where to.
unexpected. Oh, look, he's got the painting of his reference on the little
Yeah,
easel in the background.
but he could have did that image as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's classic.
Okay.
Well,
My
okay,
thing with this is like,
that's hilarious.
what is the story going on here? Like, what is going on? Like, this is insane. We got these soldiers in the background, then we get this witch lady here doing something with a cat, and there's blood. Do you find the
It's
narrative?
very confusing. Like
I
I
don't
have
know.
no idea what you're trying to say. It's hilarious, like the little
Yeah.
pieces that you've put together. But it does feel very random, and I'm not sure why those choices were made. Like I don't know what the joke is. Another thing that really catches like my
It
attention
looks
when I
like you
first
had
look at
fun
this,
making it.
yeah, it does. But one of the things that first caught my eye when I was looking at it was the feeling of everything being cut out and not in the same environment. Like the table doesn't feel like it's in the same perspective of or environment as they are, as the room is. Like the cat feels like a cutout kind of put in there. The woman feels kind of like a cutout put in there. And then I feel like the space between the opening of the door feels very immersive and feels like much more accurate. But then, like, as soon as you get into the foreground, which is supposed to be like the focal point of this image, it becomes much more choppy and like
Yeah.
pieces don't fit together anymore.
Like we've seen, of course, far more disjointed images than this, but yeah, there's a bit of it going on in there for sure. Yeah,
I think too. There's like a weird like the placement of things feels very strange. Like you've left all this room in the center of the canvas to be looking off in the distance, but we're
I
supposed to be
just
paying attention
yeah,
to these figures in the foreground.
I'm too perplexed by it without knowing the story or what you were going for to like have any sort of reasonable thoughts. I'm sorry. It's just one of those things.
But
All right.
like trying to take the image seriously, I would say like maybe the woman needs to be moved in, maybe like to actually be breaking the door frame a lot more than she is, maybe closer to the cat so they feel like connected in some way as opposed to like two isolated bookends on the painting.
And that's for me as well, as I don't know how anything is connected.
Hmm.
All right, I'm gonna pause. Round 3. All right, let's go with Luis A. So this is cool. You've got a lot of nice things with the lighting and the texture, and I think in terms of like when you look at it like this, yeah, a lot of it reads okay. But again, when you zoom in on it, you start to see the problems a lot more. Like the first thing is like, what is this deer doing here?
The deer
Like,
is definitely commanding a lot more attention than it should.
yeah, it's like you have this moment here where we assume this guy's tank broke down. He's just having a smoke because he's like, whatever, it's stuck or something. He's waiting for backup, right? And these guys sneak up on him. But that's what the moment should be. It's like, what is going on all back here? Like it again. It's curating a lot of. I think that's the theme this month is like, try to find what your image really is about, and filter out all that extra jargon that's just diluting your message.
And I think also this is another painting that feels a little checkerboardy with the values, where like the background, especially before you cropped it, was light and dark to both extremes pretty far, and then the foreground is light and dark to both extremes pretty far. Like I feel like it got as light and as dark in the background as it did in the foreground. So you're getting this like flattening of space. I feel like in this type of like super snowy environment, the background should be much lighter. So then you can use the dark shapes to bring things forward, because you're going to have all that snow and atmosphere again between you and those shapes in the background. And or I mean, if you want to focus on the white of these figures in the foreground, then you push all the stuff behind to darkness.
Like,
This is like a night scene. But
yeah,
either
they did
way,
really good over there doing that.
yeah, but I feel like the figures in the foreground with the white almost have the same value range as the background. So
Yeah, well, like you
yeah,
said, I would
that
go
helps a lot.
a lot darker atmospherically, right over here, then focus a little bit of that nice gleaming light, right on the character and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That already helps, like just simplify it and get our eyes where they're supposed to be.
Like you can see that light kind of coming in there, and then just bringing that, a little bit even further, right on the, essential shapes, in the scene.
Hmm.
I definitely think.
I'm also getting a weird perspective thing where I feel like we're looking almost straight on at the guy, almost slightly up at the tank. But then, like the figures in the foreground, it almost feels like we're looking down on them. So there's like this weird, like mixing of viewpoints
Mm-hmm.
with the figures.
Yeah, I'd get them like a little bit higher up, and
Hmm.
then they need a lot more detail. And where even though I low resed it so I could, read it, they're still like way too brushy and rough for like a lot of the scene. This
And I
tree
feel
here feels like really, really tiny, and again, it's tucked into the foreground, which I'd
I
probably just remove that or make it bigger.
I feel like the guy smoking the cigarette deserves a lot more like attention to detail as well. Like more contrast, more like bring him to life a little bit more detail.
Like I'd continue to play up, that the idea that is in a forest, just with simple shapes, and heck, you could even bring in, lighter tones, even in the background, to show like, yeah, like some of the light is hitting, some of that as well, and then just frame it. Think of like how you can frame. And I know I'm ignoring the canon and stuff. It's what we got to do under time, and then this would be a lot bigger. But
All
see,
right.
it's just you got to like always think this is the heart and soul, right, of the image, and making everything work and supplement that.
Yep, yep.
But I like a lot of what you got going on here. A lot
Yeah,
of it.
it's really cool.
One. This is awesome. This is extremely well executed. There's way too much, I think, even for a scene like this. I think you're overblowing some of that lighting, particularly in the snow, because, like, again, when you zoom out, you can't disparage at all what's ground and what's sky, and I would fix that one way or the other. So if you want the snow to be kind of like nice and light like this, just darken that sky up, just a little bit.
Yeah. There's part of me that feels a little bit like the guy in the corner. There's something about that arrangement that feels a little off about me. Like I
This
don't
one,
know. Yeah, I don't know if it's like because he's so like flat to the camera or because he's like getting chopped off like on his arm. Like if I want to see more like come down, like the canvas to come down a little bit. But there's such a huge, I don't know, size disparity, I think possibly between the kneeling guy and the dead guy on the ground. Maybe that's what's throwing me off about him. Maybe it's just
Hmm.
he's too large. There's something there though that's throwing my eye off a little bit.
Yeah, and now that you say that, of course, that's all I can see. And
Sorry.
like you don't even need it quite as high as I did it, but something to separate the two. But yeah, I think the easiest fix, right, for something like this is just to take again this really cool focal element and just upres it, or just largen it.
Hmm.
That way it can stand toe to toe with this massive, element that you have, right there. And again, what we're technically doing is just zooming in on this character. So it's like again, it just really just brings us closer
Yeah,
to the
I think
moment
you'd have to expand the canvas a little
a
bit
little
or
bit more.
make the other guy smaller so you don't have to make that guy as big compared to everything else. But either way, like there should be a closer like size between the two of them.
Hmm.
It shouldn't feel like they're like a giant and a tiny person.
But technically, it's really really nicely done. I'd maybe you could entertain the idea of like showing the silhouettes to some of like some trees maybe on the horizon or something like that, just to kind of again break all the light bright spaces. Like there's a lot of negative space,
Yeah,
in
even
the
with the changes that you've made, there's still a lot of unbroken negative space. So
it's
that
just like
like there should be something breaking up the sky.
some minimalists will thrive on that negative space and that's fine, but I don't know, I think a scene like this could really be
But
a little bit more balanced with
even
just
then,
some.
like if you're going to have a lot of negative space, the shape of it should still be really well
Yeah,
designed.
that would go up, something in it. It just needs a little tweaking, I'd say, but yeah, well done.
But really strong, and I feel like the characters were really well referenced and really well executed.
All right, Fimi. This is a really cool style you got going on.
Yeah.
Ready to rock that line art.
And I feel like yeah, it was really well drawn and designed. Like seems very balanced.
I just
Which I
checking
noticed.
everybody's. Everyone's going to posters. I think even with something like this, it's still a matter of even you got some line art. Try to find a way to organize. Because see, like a lot of this in here, this area feels
Getting messy.
extremely clustered and claustrophobic. And there's some anatomy instances in there that I would kind of configure. And the face, I don't know if it's intentional, but it does have like this overly baby face there that I find a little distracting. Give the guy like or if it is a guy, again I can't. Little, I'd get a little more descriptive with some of that personally, like give him like a, one of those old school mustaches or a beard even. But again, just because I can't tell, I'm sure someone.
I feel like there's certain parts that are really clear and well
Yeah,
done. Like the like where the head with the like cool headpiece breaks over the mountain range, that like really is a good job of being a focal point. But then like the figures behind her, the horses behind her or him, they immediately start feeling more like just a jumble of noise and shapes um, that are all kind of like fighting with each other for attention.
yeah. It's just separating some of the information you have. That's it, because like a lot of it is pretty much nicely done and it's on point and everything. It's just a lot that comes off.
Even
And
the overlap of the red horse over the green rider, there's a weird overlap there and a size disparity between those two horses, and like it almost feels like tangenty where the main horse's face is
right
going over
here,
that other rider. It almost feels like the horse is
yeah.
biting the
I
other
see you have
rider.
nothing in this area. I'd move that green rider over to here.
Yeah, just move it away and make sure the size isn't quite as disproportionate from each other.
But I mean, really cool idea, really ambitious idea overall.
Yeah, I'm really loving how ambitious a lot of these are with either like technical detail or multiple figures and immersive environments. It's really cool.
And all right, you want to start us off on this one? Great size, great size. And it's not that my computer can't handle these sizes. It's just like I'm doing recording. I'm on a call. There's video on the call, and of course, there's like a dozen massive files. It's like everything together. Like you do a couple things at a time, but everything together on my computer, just like whew.
And it's just good practice. If you're going to be sending your artwork to art directors and other people professionally, you need to know how to size it appropriately for their purpose.
This is nice. I like this a lot. This is beautiful. It's kind of, it's got a moment to it.
I
Really
do
nice.
feel like I'm getting a little bit of contradiction as far as like focal points in the image.
Yeah,
The
there's like
the guy
doesn't need
smoking over
this.
here seems very interesting and feels like its own moment. The woman running with the pigtails, that feels like its own moment.
And then there's
But
this
then
moment.
everything is pushing the eye towards that Red Cross
And
uh,
I
truck in the.
know that in your mind you have these all probably interlinked together.
But you have to pick one to be the star of the show.
Yeah, and it's like almost like if you swapped out this whole tank, because this is just like it's just a massive distraction having this shape like that long, cutting this whole canvas like that, and then
Yep.
just squeezing and in a way you're framing this, which is not the worst thing to do, but it's like just overly distracting. And I think if you had removed all of this, like the tank and these guys, and maybe put two nurses kind of grieving about that lost soldier just standing right here, it could be about them and that. It's
Right,
just
but they almost feel like two separate scenes because
right
these
now
guys
it
smoking
does.
next to the tank feel completely unrelated to the truck, the Red Cross truck, and the nurse running after it.
No, I 100% agree with you. Like I would,
And I think one of the first things I noticed when I looked at it as well was the feeling of like the shapes of the tanks being very like distracting and tangenting to the image. Like even the one tank that's facing towards the truck feels like it's tangenting with the horizon line.
yeah.
So I feel like just moving that a little bit so it like where the tank is pointing doesn't feel quite so awkward.
I'm gonna chop up your picture. Go easy on me, but I have some ideas. Like yeah, like this, right, and like again like that.
And
Doing surgery.
you might even have two paintings. Like those guys smoking next to the tank also could be an interesting painting in and of itself.
And I don't doubt that. Yeah.
And then this is a separate thing.
Yeah, like I'd break that up.
But you would need something to balance it on the other side as well, but not as distracting as what you had before.
See, like you could just do that and or leave this a little more open. But see, that becomes too open. So you could have more soldiers, lining with the road, or you could bring in, two of
Or
the
you could have backs of more soldiers walking right
yeah.
there.
Like you could fill this space with like a lot of things.
But you need to keep it like diminished, like not competing with the focal point. Yeah.
And then even heck stick a couple of them in the foreground like
Yep.
that just
Yep.
waiting
So
in
you're
line.
breaking up the borders of the canvas.
But yeah, nicely referenced either way. It's getting there. I like the lighting, the time of day, and of course the storytelling once curated will be really really great.
One last thought, real quick, is a lot of the highlights felt white because you were painting snow, but in the sky you put the light source as a warm yellow. So I would carry those warm yellows into the highlights throughout the painting as well.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
Sorry. So all right, so this is cool. It's like a splash art image where this could be like in a menu, a background menu for a game, which is cool. I think there are definitely applications for a composition and a setup like this. But if it's not for something specific like that, it does come off as a little bit. I don't want to say stiff, but it is very stiff in that regard. Which I've had to paint images like this by requirement. But if I wasn't doing that, the way he's just staring soullessly forward, in standing there that see like a lot of these, right?
It,
There's movement, there's angles, and it's how they're looking straight at you.
I think that's
Um,
part of what's confusing me is all of the reference implies like a painting or at least like these like very dynamic gestural ink drawings. But then we get like more of like almost like
Geometric,
cut
blocky.
out. It's not like it doesn't feel like a painting by any measure. It
Yeah,
feels like
so again, that it's coming down to like I'm not sure what your intent is, but based off your references, if you're heading in this direction, then yeah, this is just a quick sketch. You're gonna need to really get in there and do a lot of painting for all those elements, and then simplify, the less important areas.
well, and also just design it to be less, like just the row, very
It's too
geometric shape.
perfect, too
Yeah, it's
perfect.
too
See, there's
perfect to be a realistic painting in any way.
even soldiers aren't gonna stand that perfect. It's like you've given it. It's too obvious that you've copy and pasted things, and when you do that, you have to cover your tracks if
And
you're doing that.
if the intention is to create something that's more like a UI menu screen where it would have text overlaid on the one side, then I don't really feel qualified to critique that very much. I
Yeah,
don't know.
they are their own thing.
But yeah, as far as a painting goes, you would need to make it more organic.
All right, here's our one traditional entry I've been hearing about. So yeah, this is good. It looks like I guess it's a softer little watercolor kind of vignetting. I like the storytelling moment, and watercolor is one of the most challenging mediums to use. So I think with that, just keep working at it. I mean, you have it all organized and framed very nicely.
Yeah, it,
Um,
it looks to me like more of just learning to use the medium, learning to get comfortable with the paints and the paper, and being able to control.
but
How
I
it looks.
wouldn't design wise. Again, you have what you have here is organized, but if how it's all framed again, it's like this is the important image, and then there's 2/3 of the image which is just dead space above them. It
Yeah.
personally for me, that's not how I'd go about framing a shot. I can't say what you have here is wrong, but I would say I would do it differently. I'd add cut off, a
Well,
lot on the top,
you
and
have
then
you
add
have
it
a
on the
lot more
bottom.
overlap too. Like if we're looking straight at the figures, which looking at the figures, it looks as if they're like kind of like a direct viewpoint, not up above. Then the horizon line is actually going to be more like at their eye level. So then you got to think like you drop the horizon line down to about where their eye level
Unless
is.
it's going down a hill.
Yeah, but then there's nothing showing that that's a
Yeah.
hill. It looks flat. Even the
Yeah.
buildings look like
No,
they're
you're
on
right. You're right.
But
Sorry.
then, no, it's okay. But
Jessica's
then,
right.
like, you got to think about, like, okay, well, then have some of the buildings overlap the shapes behind them. Start breaking up that negative shape, and the overlap is going to give it much more of a feeling of dimension and immersive space. If they're like, their heads are breaking in front of, like, the walls of a building or things like that, then we get, like, this hierarchy of space. Whereas when everything is, like, separate and not overlapping, it's hard to say where in space everything is, especially when the horizon line is off.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, nice job, Raccoon.
Hmm.
Get some rest. Stays up so late.
And good job trying to use traditional mediums. It's
Yeah.
always fun to see.
All right. I had you, I think, right about there last time because I zoom in to crop out the bar. Okay, that'll work. So we're back with the final set. It is now much later in the evening because we are never quick enough to do these in one take.
We
But
tried. We tried our damnedest.
last but not least, all right. So Robin Good. Okay, this is cool. This is like soft and dramatic at the same time. It's got a very unique sort of vibe to it.
Hmm. I feel like the colors are really nice, like the use of the pinks and blues instead of just going for like white and like grays.
Yeah,
You did a nice job of like making this feel colorful, even though it's a winter snow scene. The main thing that's jumping out to me is the cropping. I feel like you have this like very like dramatic moment of the girl bleeding and dying and the guy looking down at her,
yeah, and we're
but you
just
have
like,
her cut off on the bottom of the image, and then we have all this space above him that's not important to the scene.
I think it would have been more impactful if we see slightly more three-quarter version of this character, and then you see the character laying almost like where this one is, and then you
Hmm.
see the character, in space like that. And then you can frame those two together really well. But like when you have essentially the focal point half cropped out of the image, in this particular case, because there is so much other room.
It also makes me wonder why is this a landscape painting as opposed to a portrait painting? Because if it was a portrait painting, you could get rid of a lot of the dead space on the side and you can extend the canvas down to like show her
Yeah.
legs and things like that and actually have her framed onto the canvas much nicer.
Yeah, because this so much isn't necessarily adding a
Well,
lot. You
I
could
feel
still
like
put
those
figures
figures
back
back there
here,
might be important. I'm not sure.
but you could add them anywhere, like all back
Yeah.
here and here, and you could put like a body here, and then, right, like you said, you just add to the bottom, and then even make these guys slightly smaller so it all fits in your comp, rather
Yeah, and
nicely.
then you have like her legs come down towards the end of the scene, like towards the end of the canvas, and see like the snow underneath her feet and stuff. And then you get like this, you can get like really nice shapes with the body going
Mm-hmm.
up the canvas. I feel like a really good example of something similar to this was Waterhouse. What was the name of that painting with the chick
Bottom.
laying in the town with the soldier standing next to her that was executed? Look up Waterhouse and you'll see a painting that has like the dead woman laying, and it's a really nice use of space and composition.
Yeah, the rest of it works, pretty nicely. I'm not sure if I'm like I could see this shape here almost too boldly, and it's just kind of very casually dancing around the focal point. You're,
Yep,
you
yep,
you
not
are framing it, but it also looks too convenient, or contrived for that matter. Like maybe just having this mountain here be like a little bit more of a simpler shape, running down
or
kind of like
or
that, where it doesn't
what
feel
if
like it's bending around the character.
what if the opening between the mountains actually kind of like crosses, like opens up behind him
Yeah.
and like crosses behind him, so then it's
It
almost like it creates an arrow pointing down at him
Yeah,
with
there's
it
a few
going to
simple
the sky.
solutions, but yeah, I think overall you got the lighting really nice. It's very delicate, and good use of atmosphere and mood. So
Yeah, really
really
good
good
story.
job.
I like it. It's interesting.
Cap Capco.
Really like this one.
Yeah, this is
This one's
great. You've got like a
really, really.
lot going on here between the tree and this hanging, what it would seem like a child, because that looks like
Yeah.
a teddy bear. Man, that's some dark stuff. And then committing the seppuku. I'm not sure the exact name of it. Right, the ritual suicide, which that's deep and dark in its own in
Yeah,
its own
and
way.
like the light, like the fire and the grass there shining up on him. That's really nice, really evocative.
Yeah, everything
Just-
about this is pretty nicely done. Really really well.
yeah, I the one thing it's a very tiny detail. I know that the teddy bear is there to like tell us that this is a child, but it feels kind of obvious.
Yeah, like you
And
wouldn't even need it.
yeah, and if like they probably wouldn't still be holding on to it, not to be macabre or anything. But like, yeah, it feels like too much like, look, this is a child, as opposed to like a natural part of the scene.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And these
Really
silhouettes
nice sense
work.
of atmosphere.
Yeah, I'd maybe even add a couple more guys back there too. But yeah, this is done really well. I like it. You could push some of the highlights, I think, on some of the material in there. Like, I mean, if
I,
you really get technical about it, you could detail up
yeah,
some of the stuff quite a bit more.
I was gonna say there's part of me that just wants to see like some part of this come into focus like really crisply, like
Because
the
like it,
face or like
yeah,
the sword or like that, like something on that main figure, like certain areas on that main figure to just really go in and bring it like into sharp focus because so much of the rest of it is really brushy and loose that like it doesn't have to be a lot. It could just be like a
a
few
little bit
edges.
more.
Yeah.
But very well done.
Yeah, really, really well designed.
Jessica, how about you get in there and paint this grass out to
I love the
every blade
concept.
of grass
It's
for
fantastic.
50 hours.
Oh, I'm trying to do better about that.
All right, Voltage. I think you got another name down here too. Joseph. Joseph Conley. Hey, Joseph. Welcome. So this is very atmospheric and moody scene too. I think you captured, the essence of what is going on here. A nice little passive scene, but again, it feels like a bit of a weird setup having cropped off, right, all these characters here.
And pushing them into the like lower right corner as well. Like they feel almost like secondary to the rest of
It
the image, but they're obviously the focal point.
it becomes more problematic in a case like this only really because there is so much space up above that all of this could have been accounted for.
Hmm.
But like while that's nice and it sets up the back, it sets up the tone for the piece and everything. I mean, what this image is really about is all down here, and again, we're just losing too much of them too quick.
And also, I would say having the like trucks off to one side of the painting and then the figures off on the other side of the painting is creating this like, here's a focal point, here's a focal point, here's a focal point, here, like across the bottom of the
Yeah,
canvas,
like if these
rather
are
than like,
supposed to be, yeah, sorry, like yeah, if these are like trees, I think right, the best solution to do is create more overlaps overall so that it's just not so separate. That means including trucks back here. That means bringing in additional trees, throughout the entire scene as well. So it feels more fleshed out and like the trees could even bridge the two sides of the image
hmm.
together. It's just like Jessica says, and I 100% agree. It's like two separate little bits that, yeah, just keep it. They're trying to like not touch each other. They're trying to be two separate, intentionally almost.
Yeah.
With that said,
Then there's the color.
the color and brushwork definitely, I think for most cases or people, you'd want to continue to work on that. We found a few bits of color reference too that can, not the exact same color and mood as we never find, but this is almost a little too washed out, a little too gray, and a lot like you could really bring in some nice atmosphere and colors. So some ideas for you, feel free to screen capture the video if you want. Like a painting like this, like very dramatic, a lot of really good use of subtle grays. Overall really really nice. So sorry.
Yeah, but the idea is that gray paintings can be really beautiful to have like a very like limited palette, but you have to have a lot more control over the color and be much more decisive about which colors you're using and where. And then I think brushwork becomes way more important in that case as
See,
well.
like a lot of these feel very similar in terms of like tone and feeling that yours has, but they all have like a little bit more tactile use of color in a lot of subtle ways that could really enhance your drama, and your mood in some of those. So
Yeah,
yes,
so just study some if you really like gray desaturated paintings, study some, maybe do some color studies of them and see like what transitions and what nuances they're getting to make those colors feel more intentional or those grays feel more intentional.
see, this has got little pops of the cyan, of course, little bits of like the yellow and the blue. A lot of cool things going on in there. That's very impressionistic too. But again, if your goal is more illustrative in concept, then you definitely would want to do a lot more cleanup on some of that stuff as well.
Right, and if
Like,
you look at those, the brushwork is very, it looks messy, or loose, but it's very precise, like where the edges are, how hard or soft the edges are. And yours, the edge control and the brushwork is more
yeah,
like happenstance.
yeah, I didn't even say yeah, but edge control a huge part of that as well.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah, nice image though.
really cool setup, and I think that it has potential if you could just push it a little further.
All right, we'll be right back. We're gonna grab our favorites. All right, so we were pretty much both in agreement with our two favorites, and they were right here with Capco's and earlier ons with the Omiv uh, painting. Uh, I think this was our favorite, right? There was this is
Yeah.
secondary, and
Yeah.
as a runner up, we like yours, Alyssa, a lot. It's got such strong drawing in it, but just get in there and I know you will. Just finish it up. I want to see this
Yeah.
finished someday. It's just a
It
crime it's not finished for
it's
this.
like if it was actually finished, if all those lines had been like painted and resolved and like finished, then this probably would have been my favorite.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near the level of completion that the other two are. And the other two are really gorgeous as well. Like
Yep.
just I think that one, the one you just zoomed in, is my favorite. Like just
Yeah,
great sense of atmosphere and just control. And then the runner up, the
yep.
design choices were just fantastic.
Really nice, bold. It's sharp. Feels complete. It feels consistent.
Yeah, I think that consistency is another thing. They both have a really nice like internal consistency to them.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, you got something out of the video. Remember, next time, keep your file sizes to a manageable rate for my computer. I'll put the next challenge right after this. All right, guys. So the next challenge will make it, seasonally appropriate as we usually try to do. It's going to be titled "Mother of Sorrows," and the flavor text for this is, once a healer, she's been now condemned by evil. She torments, nearby villages by summoning classic horrors. So you're going to choose, one of these universal horrors, like the Mummy, the Man Wolf Frankenstein, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Pick one of these four, and you could show it terrorizing a small village. You can choose the type of small village. You can choose whether or not you want to show what the Mother of Sorrows actually looks like. Technically, she'd be hiding in the nearby forest, and the creatures kind of come out, at the village. So you design some of these characters, do your version of it, or you can show an illustrative approach to how you could depict this as a picture. All right, this will be due October 31st. Take care.